Thursday, February the 7th. Lake level's right about 906 3/4. It's been staying pretty consistent there for the last 3-4 days. Looks like it's starting to generate a little bit of water, so the lake should start to go down a little bit, but we're still a little over 8.5 feet low, but it did come up 2 foot from that rain we got a couple weeks ago. Water temperature, I hadn't got that cold. Actually, water temperature's starting to warm up a little bit. 46.5, 47 degrees, and I think a lot of the fish are starting to move around a little bit. We had a tournament this past weekend, and there were some really big fish caught. It took a little over 22 pounds to win. There was, I think, 3 stringers over 20 pounds with 5 fish, so that's pretty impressive. We only had about a little over 12.5 pounds. I just hadn't been able to catch any big fish here lately. But there was a lot of 6 and 7 pound fish caught, and they were caught in varieties of depths. There's a lot of fish, the bigger fish being caught on the A-rigs, there's some fish being caught on jerk baits, a lot of keeper fish being caught on crankbaits. That's starting to come back into play. And with that water temperature warming up, there's it seems like a lot of them shad out there in that deeper water are starting to move around. You're seeing a lot of shad up and a little bit higher in the water column. As a matter of fact, there was one place I was jerkbaiting earlier in the week that I was hooking little shad on my jerkbait. The shad were pretty schooled up around the tops of the trees. So I think there's a variety of baits that will work. It's kind of the time of year that I'll have 7 or 8 different rods on the deck. I may have a wiggle wart on, a couple jerk baits, an Alabama rig, a grub, and I even caught a few fish. I think it was Tuesday. I caught some on a little 4-inch grub, vertical fishing, which is kind of common for the middle of the winter. I caught them at 50 foot. They were coming out of treetops. I was in an 80 foot, but the trees topped out about 50. And I was just using a little 4-inch chompers, single tail grub with on this particular one I was using a 3/8 ounce head because I was fishing so deep and it was a little windy out there, so I could stay in contact with the bait. But we also caught a couple fish swimming it, which is normally happens a little bit later, around the 1st of March, end of February, when them fish start to move. They'll still be out over deep water, but they won't necessarily be that deep. They may only be like 15 to 20 foot deep. And what I was doing was counting the bait down to about 15, make a long cast, count to 15. That'll get it down there about 15 to 18 foot on a 1/4 ounce head. And just a slow retrieve back to the boat, just like you would a swim bait. And you can also do the same thing with an Alabama rig. This past weekend, I know there was a lot of Alabama A-rig fish caught, but we threw it, one of us, my partner and I, threw it on and off throughout the day, and we never had a fish on it. Now, we had 6 or 8 keepers on a stick bait, and then a couple on a jig, but I know a lot of the other guys had caught them on the A-rig. So much of it is, being at the right place at the right time, and, it's kind of hard to cover a lot of water because a lot of the baits we're fishing, whether it's the crankbait, the grub, or the jerkbait, with that water in the high 40s, you still, the fish are getting a little bit more active, but you still got to fish slow. So it's hard to cover a lot of water. But, what I'm trying to do when I get into an area that I feel is productive, or if I've got some bait that's up in the water column, I'll try 2 or 3 different things in the same area. I might hit the couple of the points coming in, the main lake and the secondary points with a suspended jerkbait. And the ones that have been working good for me is I like to throw the spros. And the water is kind of clearing up. There's still a little bit of stain in some of the creeks, but it's in, water clarity is pretty good in most areas on the lake. Where we had that mud coming in, it's settling out. But I like to throw the Blue Bandit. Is a pretty hard one to beat. It's got like a chartreuse stripe down the side. This is a Norman Flake. And then this is like a clear Norman Flake for the real clear water. And you notice I got a little bit of chartreuse I spray on the back. But I'll try these on the main lake secondary points. I'll keep an eye on my electronics. I may throw, the A-rig out in the center of the guts if I'm marking some fish or some shad. But don't be afraid to throw that A-rig up there real shallow too. Like, the boat may be setting in 20, 25 feet and cast it up towards the bank. You'll just have to start your retrieve real quick so you don't get hung up on bottom. Then once you get a little bit out from the bank, let it drop another 5 seconds or so, get it down there a little deeper in the water column. But it seems like you really got to mix it up. It's hard for me this time of year to stay on one pattern. I think where the fish are moving, I've got to be changing and doing different things all the time. Now, I have been catching some fish on a jig around docks, and I've been catching them shallow, anywhere from 8 to no deeper than 15 foot. And I've been throwing a 3/8 ounce pig sticker Snowden jig, but like a little jewel jig, an Aikens jig will work, or a Chomper's eraser jig, just a small profile jig. And I'm using a critter craw for a trailer. Normally, if the water was warmer, I'd use like a twin tail grub, something with a lot more action. But this time of year, I like something that's small in that clear water, and something where like on the critter craw, it doesn't have a lot of action. The fish are real lethargic, and I'm basically having to get the bait down on the bottom and just crawl it out of the boat slips and working it around the stalls. And if there's some brush underneath there, that's where most of the bites seem to be coming from. But you can't hardly feel the fish. It's a real subtle bite. Like, you'll just get a little bit of pressure, or you need to keep a real close eye on your line. You'll just barely see the line move. And a lot of the same areas, if I've got a little wind, the wind seems to pick up, I might pick up a wiggle wart and fish a transition bank. Now, a lot of the stuff I'm trying to key on is I want deep water pretty close by, but a lot of these bigger fish are coming up out of the deep water, and they're not getting ready to go in there and spawn yet, but they're just outside of the areas where they're going to be spawning. And if you get a couple nice warm days where that sun gets up, a lot of these fish are in there cruising, feeding up a little bit in the areas that they're going to be spawning. And a lot of things a lot of the key right now is the consistency in the weather. Even though the water is 45 or 47 to 48 degrees, it's definitely an afternoon bite. There seems to be a good bite the first couple hours up till about 9 o'clock or so, but then as the day warms up, then fish are moving around a lot more, and the more stable the weather is, the more consistent the fish will be in the same areas from day to day. A lot of this right now where the fish, like I keep saying, are on the move, it's hard for me to pattern a certain area. It seems like wherever I get bit today, I don't get bit tomorrow. I may get bit on the same type of stuff, but not in the same area. And I think a lot of that is because there's not a whole lot of fish up there, moving around. And, with the water temperature like it is, them fish don't have to feed every day, too. As the water gets warmer, they'll get a little less lethargic, their appetites, and they'll start feeding a little bit more, so you'll be able to catch more fish. But right now, there's definitely, the bigger ones are up and cruising around and looking to feed up. So it's really an excellent time to go out there and catch a 7, maybe 8 pound fish. You may not get a lot of bites, and that's kind of common for February. It's not uncommon to go out this time of year and only get 2 or 3 bites. But if you get fortunate and get 7 to 8 bites, there's a good chance you're going to have 2 or 3 real good quality fish in that group of bites. But it seems like if you think of something, you look over there at the bank, you see the wind blowing a little bit, and you think, man, them fish ought to bite this or that. The best thing to do is tie it on, pick it up, and go over and try it, because you're not going to know if they're going to bite it if you don't throw it and try it. And if you get a bite or two, on a certain bait, go and look for the same type of bank, or maybe if the wind's coming into it a certain way, it's got a certain drop on it. Try to look for that same type bank and replace it. You do that 2 or 3 times, and you've got a pattern going. I'm finding that I'm still getting more activity in the creeks. anywhere from the secondary points in the center of the guts. But see, a lot of the shad and fish have been out in the center of these deep creeks, and now they're kind of starting to disperse. They're coming up to the secondary points where you can catch them on a jerkbait. They're coming up to some of the gravel, chunk rock transition banks, when the sun is right and up there to feed. Like I said earlier, the problem is there's not a lot of them up there at any one given time feed. It seems like you just gotta stay with it. But we've got another tournament this weekend, and I expect there's going to be a lot of big weights, big fish. Hopefully I can find a few of them. So until next week, good luck, good fishing.